Matters more urgent caused our absence. Now, witness the result.
Entire industries.
Destroyed expansion of the
Low-effort investing channels.
everywhere. Yes. We have indeed been negligent, but no more. We are back.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the Eugene Exchange. The market is open. This is the inaugural episode of my new podcast, focusing on investing, online entrepreneurship, and living abroad with a laptop lifestyle. Financial independence and freedom for yourself, all obtainable before the age of 30. I've lived through it, I've done it all for myself, and now I'm here to educate you on how to achieve the same thing. It's been quite a few months since the last upload on the YouTube channel. Where have I been? Now, actually, believe it or not, in a YouTuber's career, this is a very important question. All too often, I'm sure over the years, you all have followed a smaller niche channel you've loved, and from time to time, that channel disappears. And maybe, perhaps during that absence, they'll leave a few updates here and there. Oh, I'm so busy with such and such. I'm so busy with school, tests, or whatever. But there's never any content to follow up those excuses, right? So, my mentality has always been, sure, if you want to explain where you've been, by all means, go ahead. Frankly, I don't think most people care. They just care about the content, and that's fine. But if you want to explain where you've been, that's fine. But always, always, always follow it up with something worthwhile. And in this case, I would say the inaugural episode of a new podcast, that's a pretty big deliver for fans of the channel. And by the way, thank you to all 300 of you that have subscribed to Eugene Chargrain. It's very appreciated. Where have I been? $1 million question, isn't it? At least almost $1 million. It's been about 4 months since the last upload, and 7 months since the last proper upload. What a difference in time this has been. What I've been doing over the past few months, for those of you who have been following the Telegram journal, you'll likely already know this, or at least have a faint idea of it. For those who aren't, I'll explain. Over the past 7 months now, I've been working on a very secret investment, one that's not stocks or anything you've probably even heard of. But it was very important to me, and this investment, I would say, not completely, but secured my future. And this investment, which is a secret, and will remain a secret, as far as I know, as of 2018, only about 350 people in the entire world have this investment. Now, based on what I'm saying there, it sounds like it's something that has, limited availability, right? It's an exclusive item. Maybe it's like a special autographed photo or signed t-shirt, or maybe a Pokemon card, right? Well, it's none of those. I guarantee you've never heard of it, but here's the thing. If you did know what I invested in these past 7 months, you wouldn't think it's that exciting. And that's something I want to point out. The best investments that do things for people actually aren't all that exciting. So I can tell you, if you knew what I spent all this time preparing and working for, and what I invested in, it wouldn't be that exciting. If there is any hype in your mind, please put it aside. I doubt you do, but by any chance, if you are extremely curious and want to know, just put it aside. I promise it's not that interesting. It just happened to be very time consuming. So that's where I was the past few months. I had a lot going on. Naturally, with the world situation as it is, everyone was in that same situation. I was no different. And if you have been having a hard time over the past few months, believe me, I can relate, and I wish you the best. And just keep moving forward. The year's almost over, and the future is not yet written. Naturally, now at this point, it's time to talk about the purpose of this podcast. And I would say the purpose of this podcast is about the same as the Telegram journal. If you all remember the inaugural post of the Telegram journal, which I've been updating very regularly since the start of this year, the point of this podcast is investing news, social criticism, commentary on current events, and also to education on all areas investing, personal finance, and retiring early, and even living abroad. Now, I've been through all these, and as the intro might have told you, I would say I retired early by age 24, built a decent online business, self-supporting, moved abroad, and have a lifestyle that shows it. And the point of this podcast is to educate you, the Gen Z out there, or you, the younger investor out there, or maybe even older, on how to accomplish the same thing. This podcast is all about education. And to dovetail with this, actually, the next guest I'm working on getting, some of you maybe will know, I've had a few tie-ins with this person from time to time, is a Gen Zer, Zoomer, who's been aspiring to be where I am in life. He's just a few years behind me, and we're going to take a look at his lifestyle and what he's been doing to get there. He doesn't want to take the traditional path in life, and that's one thing I knew from very, very on, that from the few jobs I did do, a traditional job was simply not for me, and boy was that the right decision, and boy have I been rewarded for taking the different path in life. That's what this podcast is all about. Taking the path in life others haven't. So this guest is looking to be where I am and living off of investment income. So as time moves on, I keep forgetting, and I am less and less in touch with how I used to be in my early 20s and how hungry and thirsty for success I was. And I think it'll be a very, very informative discussion, and also one where you, listening, can put yourself in the mindset of the person I'll be talking to. So I'm very, very excited, and I hope we can get that guest on for the Eugene Exchange podcast. Very briefly in the news, 2 IPOs I'm quite interested and quite excited about are the Corsair IPO and the Roblox IPO. Naturally, the Corsair IPO already took place, and I can tell you, looking at some of this new equipment in my studio, the Corsair logo is on quite a lot of these products, namely the mousepad and a few other things. Corsair is very interesting computer accessories, computer hardware business. As time goes on, more and more people are starting to finally figure out it's not that hard to build your own PC. It's not that hard to get into custom PCs versus the old out-of-the-box purchasing habits people used to do. Myself, for example, it took the longest time for me to understand computer hardware. And if someone as clueless on technology as me can figure it out, I guarantee everyone else is as well. I was seeing YouTube videos now with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views on what hardware to put in their PC. So I'm noticing that the consumer is finally adjusting to, again, computer hardware, something that was very esoteric in the past and only the techiest of the tech people would have known. Naturally, the Corsair IPO is an indicator of this. I picked up a few shares, and I'll be watching this one very, very closely. The main thing I'm interested in today is actually the Roblox IPO, which I will be watching with bated breath. The Roblox IPO definitely is going to be coming at a very high market saturated point, which is totally fine. Everything is IPO'd at ridiculous valuations at these times and in these days, but Roblox is quite the game. I can tell you I've personally played Roblox on live streams, and Roblox is quite the game. It runs on all kinds of crappy systems, like at the lowest of the low-end hardware, whether it's, phone, an iPad, or a computer or anything. Roblox just dominates the younger generation. Every young person I've talked to, I would say nearly 100%, at one point or another, or even up to now, currently in their teens or even early 20s, they still play Roblox. It is insane. I mean, this thing is just an absolute money printer. And if you look around the internet, you can find a few articles praising the genius of Roblox's business model. There are a few people who have become millionaires just based off creating game modes for Roblox alone. It's really, really an incredible thing. And the financials behind this company are definitely backing up the story. So when this IPOs, I think I will be taking a position. I'm very interested in this. In fact, I might even try and get the IPO waiting list for my brokerage. It's very interesting to me. One thing that is a bit of a red flag is that the share structure for Roblox is intentionally structured to keep the CEO in charge, which I'm not a big fan of. There have been companies I've seen in the past where the structures of the shares have been made such that the CEO will always stay in control. And sure, when a company is doing well, no one has a problem with it. But when the company is running into trouble, sometimes it's so crucial you have to oust the CEO. And if that's not an option for shareholders, that makes me a bit nervous. That was the only thing I would say that is a bit of a downside of this Roblox IPO. According to the Motley Fool, this is what they have to say. Like most modern tech companies, this part is true, Roblox uses a dual-class share structure to allow its CEO to maintain control, similar to Facebook with Mark Zuckerberg. The Class A shares of Roblox being sold to the public are entitled to 1 vote per share, while Class B shares get 20 votes per share. Roblox has 2 co-founders, David Baszucki, I won't even try to pronounce that name, and Eric Castle. Castle, of course, died of cancer in 2013, and Baszucki serves as the CEO currently. So the chief executive of Roblox, according to Motley Fool, once again, controls 100% of Roblox's 57.3 million Class B shares. Now, what will be interesting to know is if there are enough Class A shares being sold to outnumber this, but I remain skeptical. If you want to be entering a tech company under the same guise of control that Mark Zuckerberg had over Facebook, that is the downside of this Roblox IPO. But other than that, the statistics like the user growth, the revenue growth, the free cash flows, all looking great on Roblox. And I can tell you, just having engaged with the younger generation myself personally, Roblox has total saturation and domination over that market share. Something to keep an eye on for sure. As always, I'd like to remind the listeners I have a Telegram journal that I'm blogging on fairly regularly and writing down my investment thoughts and commentary on current investment news. It goes into specifics of what exactly my positions have been over these past few months and what I think about that. And I'll tell you one thing, the commentary on inflation hedges and alternative currencies is definitely worth a look. As always, I'll remind the viewer I'm still in gene therapy and will continue to be for the foreseeable future. It's very interesting to look that gene therapy has gone from not even a single approved therapy, maybe just one in 2016, to now the near dozen that there are today. You may be shocked to believe this actually, but right now, about 90% of my assets are actually not US based anymore. And this was a deliberate decision on my part. It's important to remember that there are other countries out there, and sure, over the past century, the US has been the dominating force. Just try to remember that the explosive growth of the United States was left over from a bygone era of explosive growth after the Second World War, and frankly, the United States of the 1980s simply no longer exists anymore, just by the nature of all the technological advancements and massive societal changes that we've been through. So remember that looking at current events when comparing responses even to this current situation with the coronavirus, some countries have done better than others in dealing with it. And with me, I'm looking at the countries that have responded the best to coronavirus, and I just see that as a good marker of general national competence. And I think everyone can agree that regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, the United States' response to this coronavirus pandemic has been anything but competent. And I have no faith in all, if you followed my early coronavirus commentary back in January, I have no faith in all of the people running all levels and all institutions of the United States. So naturally, my investments reflect that. That being said, I will be continuing to ramp up my U.S. investments now, specifically, as always, in the biotech and pharmaceutical field. I find that biotech and pharmaceuticals are so upstream of all the major consumer problems. For example, I'm not concerned about the continuing ability of pharmaceutical and biotech companies to sell their products. This is a process so far removed from the consumer that I think it will continue to be viable even in the United States in the future. Keep in mind too, out of everything going on in the United States right now, what's the one thing that has been delivering? It's not the social policy, it's not the bailouts for normal people, it's not the PPP loans. It's been the response of US biotech firms. Like it or not, they have delivered on vaccines. Last note on the YouTube front, I'll give you all a freebie. This is a market opportunity I've identified over the past 2 years, and I've encouraged all my friends privately to take part in this. And if you have, a few others haven't, and that current market opportunity on YouTube actually is history content. I've noticed that history channels have finally learned how to cope with the YouTube monetization schemes. There was a rough period in 2016, 2017 when a few of them, the rules were so opaque and vague that history channels, many of them were lost by the wayside and no one knew how to adapt to it. Finally, the field is settled, the fires have died down, and there are actually history channels that are thriving on YouTube right now. We're talking millions of views, probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars with high audience engagement. So if you're looking for a freebie YouTube idea on how to get started and build an audience fast and relatively easily, start a history channel with a small team. Get an editor, get a good writer. That's important if you can't do it yourself. Get a good writer and you're good to go. Right now, there are channels I'm seeing, their videos are uploaded in 480p, and they're getting millions of views. And as far as I can tell, a lot of these channels, they have no sizable competition. But you need to act quickly. I'm noticing there are a few with very high production value moving into this space. So if you want to compete, either make sure you have good production value yourself, and I'll talk about that in other episodes, how to start a very good YouTube channel, or get on the ground now, get rolling now, and build up that audience and get yourself entrenched. All right, welcome to the Martin Minute, the minute in this podcast where I update you on the greatest investing mind of our generation, Martin Shkreli. I didn't expect this week's update to be as big as it was going to be. In fact, I was just going to introduce this section of the podcast and then leave it at that. But I have some very, very good news. The Martin Shkreli investing blog is back. I did a lot of digging. I scoured the corners of the internet just to bring to you what I found, the most interesting bits from the Martin Shkreli blog. Not a lot of people know about this, so I would say this is fairly exclusive information. For those of you who have been following even more closely, the previous Martin Shkreli blogs had gotten in a little trouble from these spurious accusations that he was blogging from a, quote, contraband device in prison. Martin himself has something to say about this. On the new blog, he says, quote, "I have never and will never blog from a contraband device. I have a 13,000 character limit, 30-minute sessions, and no copy-paste functionality. I send my composition to the assistant who posts it. If I read or hear that anyone is trying to indicate otherwise, I will not hesitate to file a legal complaint. My attorney has prepared a 100-page suit against the Wall Street Journal for defamation, but I have decided not to file. I will not be so kind this time." So, just want to clear the air on the Martin Minute here, the first one ever, inaugurating this series. The current Martin Shkreli blog, in fact all previous Martin Shkreli blogs, are totally and completely legitimate. And you will see that with the quality of information here he's sharing with us. From what I've gathered from these posts is that Martin is very, very cautious and aware that this, in fact, could be a market top. He calls the case of Tesla stupefying, and he isn't too much of a fan of Nikola either. He says, actually, quote, "I have a lot to say on the markets. My guess is they're toppish, and we're in for a rough, long haul." Software and tech, this is Martin, software and tech in general are giving investors a bit of false hope. Between the damage the coronavirus has done, and the ensuing damage of large deficits, and a $7 trillion Fed balance sheet will do, resulting from a less than efficient attempt to stimulate, we are in for a long-term reckoning. Government and entitlements have grown very, very large, and I think we'll have some austerity in some form in our future. As usual, I would remain nimble and market neutralish. That's Martin. Now, what's very interesting is he has some words specifically on Tesla, and for those of you who have been talking with me in private back when we had the investing Discord, his thoughts on Tesla almost completely mirror mine. I came to these same ones independently, but what he has to say about Tesla and the hype around it is interesting. Then I'll add my own commentary afterwards. Martin Shkreli on Tesla. I think a lot of people are going to get hurt on this, referring to Tesla. I don't have any animus towards the company or Musk, who I personally admire. Every generation/wave of new investors learns the hard way that there is a vast difference between a good company and a good stock. Tesla is a good company, perhaps great. They'll keep growing revenue and start generating consistent cash flow, but it just isn't worth $400 billion. Could Musk pull a rabbit out of the hat and create a lot of value? Sure. But why would you intentionally pay for the highly uncertain possibility that smart actions, presumably available to others, catch up to the value of the $400 billion? Investing is about doing the opposite. Good management is important, and some credit/value must be given to management's ability to generate high returns, but there is a limit to that, and stocks rarely keep management premium no matter how good the management is. See Berkshire Hathaway, which persistently trades at a discount. I'm entirely on board with this line of thinking about Tesla. I've stayed mostly away from Tesla. I briefly owned it earlier this year in 2020. What we're finding, though, is that, as Martin is saying, Tesla is a great company, and I've driven in the cars, and frankly, they work. But the stock itself, what's surrounding the company, is highly distorted. You have all these hype YouTube videos, and the sheer market pressure put on by all these Robinhood accounts and all the interest and speculation going around it. It's creating a very artificial disconnect between the company and the stock. I'll even bring up as a data point here on Tesla. This is my commentary. Cryptocurrency exchanges, which I think are the number one indicator of what a young person who's hype investing is doing. Cryptocurrency exchanges favored by the young hype-filled investor are now listing Tesla and other super popular U.S. equities like NEO and Nikola and the other ones. Great company, and I'm sure if you want to do a psychology play, I can understand your reasoning on that. And by psychology play, I mean that if you think the hype is going to continue to surround Tesla and younger, newer investors are going to keep throwing their money in and you want to profit off of that psychological move, I totally understand. For me, I've got enough money where I can be in other places and I don't need to chase something like Tesla. Probably the most interesting and frankly hopeful bit of news coming from the Martin Shkreli blog now that I found after scouring the post is that, believe it or not, Martin Shkreli estimates that he has just 14 months remaining on his prison sentence. To me, that was insane. I thought we weren't looking to see Martin Shkreli until 2024, 2025, but listen to what he says. It's very possible that we could see Martin Shkreli back in action as early as 2022, which is just around the corner. Here's what he has to say. 37 months down, not too many to go. So we have an 84-month sentence minus 12 months from good time equals 72 months. Subtract 12 months for RDAP equals 60 months. Subtract 6 to 12 months for halfway house/home confinement. 6 is statutory, but more is being given the current circumstance, as well as the FSA, First Step Act credits. I've earned some of those. Call it 9. That leaves 51 months minus 37 months equals 14 months to go. The final note I'll say here on the Martin Shkreli Minute is that he, by the looks of his blog posts, he reads at least 2 academic papers per week. You should be doing this. The guy's in prison. He's juggling all kinds of problems and work. I mean, he's dealing with his lawyers. He's trying to navigate the prison system. Our man Shkreli, he reads at least two, sometimes more, but at least 2 academic papers per week. I know this is a cliche, and sure, it's the age of the internet, and everyone wants to get their information through videos, and I do this as well, but you should be reading. You really, really should be reading. For actual quality of content, even still in this day, text-based information, text-based learning is still an important place to be. Don't forget that. This has been the Martin Minute on the Eugene Exchange podcast. Next time on the Martin Minute, we'll cover the stocks Martin is excited by and has been talking about. I know for me personally, I'm going to be taking a very, very close look at the ones he's been talking about. That's it for the Martin Minute. All right, so that concludes our inaugural episode. I have a feeling this podcast will get better, but please help the podcast by engaging with and sharing this everywhere. I have a lot of really interesting friends over my years building a business on YouTube. So primarily these friends are YouTubers, and I'd love to bring them on the show and get their views on finance and investing and what's going on YouTube in general, and also making a strong living for yourself online and gaining financial independence. This is particularly interesting, I think, to you listening to this, is because you get everything from YouTubers who have a sudden influx of money and they're buying gifts for everyone and Lamborghinis, and then their channel's dead and they're just total dumps down. Their life is pretty much over after just a few years. Then you get YouTubers who are smart and effective with how they deal with the sudden influx of cash, and you still see them around persisting even today. So I'd love to bring some of my YouTuber friends on the show and get their view on how they've dealt with suddenly having a ton of money and the feast and famine months on YouTube, where one month, let's say you're making $30,000, $50,000, and then one month you're making $2,000 or $1,000. I think that will be very interesting content for the podcast. But as you know, if we want to bring interesting guests on, which I'm sure we can do, we first need to get clout for the show, right? So no one wants to appear on a podcast if there isn't some sort of audience there behind it. So please, if you want to help this out, help us get better guests out, leave a comment, leave a like. And on my part, I'll keep grinding and practicing so the podcast and the production value gets better and better every single time. That's all for now, and thank you for joining me on this journey.